Welcome to Charette Theory. Tonight, or whenever you find yourself here, we invite you to pause for a moment, to step inside a space where the hum of the city softens, and the steady patter of rain against old factory windows becomes a kind of quiet music. So settle in. Let the fog outside blur the hard edges of the city. Let the slow rhythm of falling rain remind you that sometimes, the most radical futures are built on foundations that have always been here, waiting to be found, waiting to be warmed by human hands. Welcome to Is This the Future of Urban Loft Kitchens? Let's find out together. Picture this, you're standing in the middle of an old warehouse, somewhere deep in the bones of a city that never really sleeps. Outside, the streets glisten under streetlights, slick with rain, alive with distant echoes of cars passing, people moving through the night under umbrellas that catch and scatter the glow. Inside, there's the hush of a space that has known work, labor, industry, walls that once held the heat of machines, floors that once carried the weight of crates and cables. But now, instead of the whir of gears or the hiss of steam, there's the low clink of cutlery, the slow boil of a kettle, the warmth of lights hung deliberately from beams once meant for hoists and pulleys. And at the center of it all, a kitchen. Raw, open, unapologetically exposed, and yet softened by human hands. A concrete island topped with warm wood, overhead pipes painted matte black instead of left to rust. Maybe there's a line of plants along the window ledge, catching stray drips of rain that slip through the old glass. Maybe someone stands there now, brewing coffee late at night, stirring a pot of something simple that makes the space smell like home. This is the urban loft kitchen. A space born from necessity, shaped by history, and now carried forward by a question: is this how we'll live tomorrow? In the next hour, we're going to wander through that question together. We'll walk the rain-slicked alleys of the city's past, the factories and workshops that once defined the skyline, and we'll stand inside the kitchens that have grown up inside these old frames. We'll talk about what makes these spaces work, why they matter so deeply to people who live with one foot in the old world and one in the new, and what these kitchens tell us about how cities adapt, endure, and reinvent themselves, one meal, one warm light, one rainy day at a time. before we can imagine the future of these raw, rain-soaked spaces, we need to understand where they came from and why they've endured far beyond the factories they used to be. Picture the industrial loft at the turn of the 20th century. Back then, these buildings weren't romantic at all. They were workhorses of the modern city, vast open floors built to hold heavy machinery, thick brick walls to bear the vibrations of looms or presses, massive windows to let in as much daylight as possible before electric bulbs were cheap and common. Beams of iron and timber, floors of poured concrete strong enough to carry the weight of 100 busy hands and the goods they produced. In cities like New York, London, Berlin, Chicago, these factories rose alongside rail yards and shipping docks, humming with the promise of industry. Generations passed through them, carrying out the same repetitive tasks by hand, by machine, by sweat and stubborn resolve. No one paused to admire the brickwork or the steel trusses. They were just background, durable, dependable, invisible. But cities change. Industry shifts. By the mid-20th century, manufacturing was leaving the urban cores for the suburbs or going overseas altogether. What was left behind was a skeleton: empty factories, vacant warehouses, big cavernous buildings too costly to demolish and too risky to develop into conventional apartments. For a while, they just sat there, windows broken by stray rocks, graffiti on the loading docks, rain leaking through the roof onto dusty floors. Then, slowly, people returned. Not landlords, but artists and wanderers, young painters, sculptors, writers with small budgets and big ideas. They looked past the grime and saw what developers could not: space, light, height, freedom to live and work in the same place, to build something new inside the ruins of something old. A mattress on the floor, a battered table doubling as an easel, a kitchen cobbled together from salvaged cabinets and a second-hand stove. For these first loft dwellers, the kitchen was an afterthought at first, a few hot plates on a rolling cart. But as the years passed and the idea spread, the kitchen grew more intentional. It became part of the show, a place to host friends, share meals, trade ideas deep into the night under high ceilings and flickering bulbs. By the 1970s and 80s, cities caught on. Developers bought up whole blocks of old warehouses, turning them into artist lofts, at first grudgingly, then enthusiastically. Suddenly, exposed brick wasn't a sign of neglect but a symbol of character. Pipework wasn't hidden away, it was celebrated. Rough concrete floors were polished, not covered. And the kitchens, once improvised, became a statement. Islands crafted from poured concrete, heavy steel shelves, repurposed industrial carts and fixtures that looked like they'd been lifted straight from a workshop floor. What started as necessity became a style. What began as an accidental community of artists grew into a desirable urban lifestyle, one that promised authenticity in cities that were becoming slicker and more sanitized every year. Today, the industrial loft kitchen is as much about narrative as it is about function. It tells a story of industry and art, past and present, rough edges and refined living. It's a space that asks you to see beauty where others once saw only utility, to stand in the same footprint where laborers once packed crates and now pack lunches for families or pour wine for friends on rainy nights. So when we ask, is this the future of urban loft kitchens? The truth is, it's a future built from what was left behind. A foundation of brick, concrete, steel, and the people who saw possibility in what others abandoned. loft kitchen came from, but what makes it so compelling today? Why do so many people, designers, homeowners, even whole neighborhoods, hold on to this vision of raw walls and open layouts, especially in cities that seem to change overnight? To answer that, you have to stand in one on a rainy afternoon and really feel it. Imagine you're in a loft kitchen right now. The windows stretch nearly floor to ceiling, framed in steel, droplets tracing paths down the glass while traffic murmurs far below. The ceiling soars above you, maybe 15 feet high or more, with ductwork zigzagging overhead like urban arteries. And right in the center of this openness sits a kitchen that doesn't hide, it claims its space unapologetically. Unlike suburban kitchens that might be tucked behind a wall or closed off with a door, the urban loft kitchen is exposed. It's meant to be seen, even when it's messy. It's the core that ties the entire expanse together. The place where people naturally drift, whether you're hosting a dinner or just brewing a midnight cup of tea for one. It holds conversations, secrets, plans, the smell of garlic and fresh herbs. It holds you. For so many who choose to live in cities, and especially in cities where rain falls often and the skyline feels like a fortress of glass and steel, the loft kitchen becomes a counterbalance. It's not just a place to prepare food, it's a place to gather warmth. It's the antidote to the anonymity of the city streets. It says, inside here, there's something human. Something imperfect. Something that breathes. This is why urban kitchens today matter more than ever. Because modern life can feel sterile. We carry screens in our pockets, we work in co-working spaces that look the same from London to Jakarta, we swipe through meals we don't cook ourselves. But in a loft kitchen, raw brick reminds you of hands that laid it a century ago. Heavy beams overhead remind you this space once vibrated with the clang of machines. Even the scratches on a reclaimed wood island tell a story that no marble countertop ever could. And this matters not just emotionally, but practically, too. Cities are denser than ever. Space is expensive. Families live smaller but dream bigger. So the kitchen can't be wasted square footage, it has to do double duty. It's where you chop vegetables and sort mail. Where laptops open for a quick meeting while bread rises in the oven. Where friends gather on stools around an island that's half dining table, half workbench. The open loft plan invites this fluid life. There are no doors to shut you off from the people you live with. Cooking becomes performance, connection, not isolation. You're in the same room as the living, the working, the resting. And yet, for all its openness, the loft kitchen also offers privacy of a different kind. It's an inward-looking sanctuary. On a rainy urban day, when the city feels too loud or too cold, you can stand barefoot on concrete warmed by an old rug, lean against the solid heft of a poured island, watch the city blur through misted glass. And remember that the walls that once held industry now hold your daily life. Your breakfast. Your late-night glass of wine. Your plans for what tomorrow might be. In that sense, the urban loft kitchen is more than a room. It's proof that cities can soften without losing their edge. That rawness can comfort. That the future might not look like something brand new, but something familiar made better, warmer, more human. This is why these kitchens matter today. And maybe why, in cities where rain and concrete meet, they'll matter even more tomorrow. true industrial loft kitchen, and one thing is clear before you even open a cabinet or strike a match: these spaces don't hide what they're made of. They're honest, unvarnished, yet carefully considered down to the last rivet and rough edge. This is what gives them their quiet power, rawness, refined just enough to feel like home. Take the walls. You'll see brick left exposed, brick that carries a century's worth of soot, patched here and there, pointing that's been repointed, maybe a crack running diagonally like a vein. In another home, you'd plaster over it. Here, you seal it, light it well, let it breathe. The floor might be concrete, poured decades ago to bear the weight of machines heavier than anything you'll ever haul in a modern kitchen. It's probably been polished, sometimes dyed or stained, but never disguised. Every chip, every swirl in its surface is like the grain of old wood, a reminder that this floor was built to outlast trends. Above your head, steel pipes snake along beams of timber darkened by time. In the past, they carried steam or oil. Today, they carry nothing but the suggestion that this place was once more than a home, it was part of the city's working heartbeat. Designers could box them in, but they don't. They leave them out in the open, tracing lines that guide your eye from corner to corner like an urban constellation. Yet, for all this roughness, a good loft kitchen is never careless. It's not a half-finished basement or a dusty garage. It's a space where raw materials are chosen with intention and balanced with pieces that make daily life more than bearable. They make it beautiful. The countertop might be concrete too, but sealed to resist stains, polished to catch the soft glow of pendant lights overhead. Or maybe it's thick butcher block, oiled to a deep honey that warms the cool expanse of stone and steel. Cabinetry is simple but solid. Plywood with a matte lacquer, reclaimed wood doors with sturdy steel handles. Nothing too fussy, nothing flimsy. Shelving might be open, thick reclaimed planks mounted on pipe brackets, showing off ceramics, glass jars of dry goods, cast iron pans that look like they belong. There's a story in each piece: a table made from an old door, a pot rack forged from salvaged iron, a vintage stool with a dent that no one bothers to buff out. All of it feels lived in, but never sloppy. Rawness is paired with craft. Rough edges are framed by practical details, hidden drawers that glide open silently, integrated appliances that keep the lines clean, dimmable lighting that shifts from bright task light in the morning to warm ambience when the sky goes slate grey. This careful balance is what sets the true industrial loft kitchen apart from cheap imitation. Anyone can slap subway tile on a wall or hang a fake Edison bulb over an island and call it industrial. But a real loft kitchen respects its materials. It understands that rawness is only compelling when it's earned. When it's balanced with care, maintenance, restraint. These kitchens also remind us that imperfection is not failure, it's character. A concrete countertop will develop hairline cracks, brick will crumble at the edges. Wood will scratch, steel will gather fingerprints. Instead of fretting, the best owners lean in. They seal, oil, wipe, and then get on with their day. Over time, these marks become a record of life lived: coffee rings from early mornings, a nick in the butcher block where someone once chopped too quickly. So when we talk about raw materials and refined purpose, we're really talking about a promise that the space will age with you. That it will hold up under the heat of the oven, the clang of pans, the heavy footsteps of friends gathering around an island on a rainy night. That it will still stand strong when trends come and go, when the weather changes, when life demands a space that works as hard as you do. In the end, the loft kitchen doesn't shout for attention with shiny marble or ornate fixtures. It whispers through its rough walls and smooth counters, "I'm here for the long haul. I'll carry your daily life in my bones, just like I carried the city's industry so many years ago." taken in the raw materials, the brick, the steel, the concrete softened by warm wood and lived in marks, you start to see how an industrial loft kitchen isn't just about surfaces. It's about how space moves, how it flows, how it echoes the city it stands in. Because if you look closely, you'll see that a loft kitchen works the same way a city does, wide open yet carefully divided, raw yet human, structured yet alive. In traditional homes, a kitchen is often tucked away, boxed in by drywall and doorways, hidden from the main living spaces. But in a loft, walls are scarce by design. The kitchen can't hide, it has to coexist with everything else, living, dining, working, dreaming. The result is a layout that feels like a microcosm of urban life, connected zones stitched together by invisible lines of movement. Walk through a well-designed loft kitchen and you'll notice how the island becomes a street corner, a place where people naturally gather, linger, lean in to talk. Sometimes it's a massive block of concrete or reclaimed wood that anchors the space in the same way an old city square anchors a neighborhood. It holds the cooktop, the sink, the place where you chop herbs or pour wine for friends leaning on the other side. Beyond the island, you'll find clear sightlines, no awkward walls to duck behind, no half walls to break the flow. You can stand at the stove and talk to someone lounging on a vintage sofa 20 feet away. You can keep an eye on a child doing homework at the dining table, glance across to the windows where the rain streaks down, the city flickering like a distant backdrop. The best loft kitchens use layout to draw boundaries without building walls. Sometimes a freestanding shelf acts like a subtle partition, storage on one side, open display on the other. Sometimes a change in flooring material hints at a shift in purpose, concrete under the kitchen island, warm wood planks under the dining area just beyond. Lighting does its part too. Pendant lights above the island carve out an intimate zone in all that openness, like street lights defining a courtyard. Track lights highlight a brick feature wall or an old steel column, giving the space a rhythm you can feel but not always see. And then there's storage, the eternal puzzle of the open plan. In a loft kitchen, storage often refuses to be hidden entirely. Instead, it becomes part of the architecture, massive pantry cabinets that blend into the walls, industrial racks on casters that can move when you need to reconfigure. Open shelving that shows your plates and spices like a market stall, honest and easy to reach. This flexibility mirrors the city outside, spaces that evolve, shift, and find new uses as life changes. One year you might need a long dining table for big gatherings, the next, you break it down into smaller pieces that double as work desks. The island that once held quick breakfasts can turn into an impromptu workbench for creative projects on a quiet rainy afternoon. Above all, a loft kitchen layout celebrates movement, the way people drift through, pause, gather, then move on. Just like the city never stays still, neither does this space. It invites you to stand still or drift, to cook alone or fill the air with voices and laughter. It respects that daily life is rarely neat and rarely static, and it leaves room for both solitude and company, mess and order. So when you stand in an industrial loft kitchen on a grey urban day, look around, the layout is telling you something. It's saying that the city's energy doesn't have to stop at your door. It can live here too, softened by warmth, framed by raw walls, echoing through open spaces that invite you to stay a while, and then move on when you're ready. So far, we've explored the raw bones, the brick, the concrete, the beams, and how the layout stitches these elements into something open yet intimate. But there's another layer that makes an industrial loft kitchen feel alive, especially when the weather turns: the light. If you've ever spent a rainy afternoon in a loft kitchen, you know the windows are everything. Tall, steel-framed, sometimes slightly drafty, they were designed to flood the factory floor with daylight back when daylight was cheaper than electricity. On clear days, they paint the room with sun, casting shadows that dance across the brick and concrete. But when the sky goes grey, as it so often does in old cities, these windows turn into vast, cool canvases that pull you inward. This is when a good lighting plan becomes the soul of the space. Because the right light doesn't just help you see, it helps you feel. It turns cold concrete warm. It softens raw edges. It makes a cavernous room feel like a shelter. A well-designed loft kitchen layers its light like a city layers its streets, some broad and open, others narrow and tucked away. Start with the pendants. They hang over the island, a row of soft pools glowing like street lamps on a damp urban block. Their shapes echo the industrial past, maybe metal shades salvaged from an old workshop, or minimalist glass domes that let Edison bulbs show off their filaments. They do more than illuminate your chopping board, they carve out a pocket of warmth in a sea of concrete and steel. Then there's task lighting, discreet under-cabinet strips that wash your backsplash in a gentle glow. In a loft kitchen, this might run along reclaimed shelving, highlighting ceramics, spice jars, maybe a row of plants that catch the light like small urban gardens clinging to a windowsill. Track lights often snake across the ceiling beams, flexible, adjustable, casting beams onto the raw brick wall you didn't bother to hide. Some designers mount them on steel rails that echo the pipes running through the space, so even the fixtures feel like part of the architecture, not an afterthought. And then there's ambient light, the softest, most forgiving layer. Wall sconces might wash a section of concrete in a gentle gradient. A vintage floor lamp in a corner throws a warm halo that bleeds into the kitchen when the overhead's dim. Even candles find their place here, tiny flickers that play against the hard surfaces, reminding you that a little flame can make all the difference when the rain taps gently at the windows. Modern loft dwellers often weave smart controls into this old shell. Dimmers are a must, the ability to shift the mood from bright and focused in the morning to soft and golden by nightfall. Sometimes the bulbs themselves are smart, adjusting color temperature as the day fades, compensating for the gray light that can flatten a space if you let it. But good lighting in an industrial loft kitchen isn't just about fixtures and switches. It's about contrast. Letting shadows exist. Letting darkness hug the corners where you don't need it bright. This play between light and dark brings depth, the same way the city outside glows under streetlights but leaves alleys and side streets in mystery. It's this dance of brightness and shadow that keeps an industrial kitchen from feeling sterile. Without it, all that concrete, steel, and brick might feel cold, heavy, even oppressive. With it, those same raw surfaces become a backdrop for warmth, a reminder that no matter how rough the materials, the light can always soften them. So when rain falls steady and dusk creeps in early, the loft kitchen stays alive. The pendant lights flicker on. The concrete counter picks up a warm sheen. The brick wall glows like it's storing heat from another season. And you stand there, stirring a pot or pouring a drink, grateful that someone thought enough to treat light not as an afterthought, but as an essential part of making an old space feel like home. it's easy to stand in an industrial loft kitchen and feel dwarfed by it all. The vastness of the ceilings, the unyielding hardness of poured concrete underfoot, the weight of steel beams and brick walls that seem to swallow sound and reflect the faint echo of your footsteps back to you. But the magic, the real allure of a good loft kitchen is how it wraps all that coldness in warmth so subtle you almost don't notice it at first. It's not obvious like a fireplace or a roaring radiator. It's woven in through details, texture, tone, materials that invite touch, choices that break the chill without ever masking the building's honest bones. Start at the floor. Concrete is famously cold, but in a loft kitchen, it might be softened by layers that shift with the seasons. A vintage Persian runner under the island. A patchwork of woven rugs near the sink where you stand barefoot on a rainy morning. These textiles absorb the echo of footsteps, catch crumbs from a late-night snack, and remind your feet that comfort can live alongside raw utility. Look at the surfaces. Yes, the counters might be poured concrete or stainless steel, but they're balanced with warm, tactile moments. A slab of reclaimed butcher block where knives leave their gentle scars. Open shelves of raw oak or walnut, edges sanded smooth but not perfect, grain patterns that draw your eye and beg your hand to trace along them. Then there are the objects, the everyday things that anchor a loft kitchen in human warmth. Cast iron pans that gather seasoning over the years. Enamel kettles with tiny chips that tell you they've been loved, not babied. Crockery that doesn't match, hand-thrown mugs, old mixing bowls, wooden spoons darkened by oil and time. These pieces sit out in the open, reminders that warmth isn't always something you install, sometimes it's something you collect slowly. Plants play their part, too. A loft kitchen may seem like an unlikely greenhouse, but a row of herbs on a windowsill or a trailing pothose on an open shelf breathes life into the hard lines. In corners where the concrete feels too cold, a big fiddle leaf or rubber plant in a clay pot can soften the harsh edges, turning forgotten pockets into gentle green pauses. The colors help, too, or rather, the restraint of them. Industrial palettes lean on neutrals, charcoal grays, deep blacks, warm browns of exposed wood. But smart designers slip in warmth where you least expect it. A pop of muted mustard in a vintage chair tucked near the island. A splash of rust or terracotta in a ceramic backsplash. A stack of linen napkins in soft earth tones, left casually by the stove. And then there's the human warmth, the most important layer of all. The warmth that comes from the life happening here. A simmering pot on a cold day, the smell of bread rising, the quiet company of someone leaning on the island, tracing the grain of the wood while they listen to you talk about your day. The sound of rain outside, softened by the hum of a kettle about to boil. In a loft kitchen, warmth is never forced. It's found in the tension between what's hard and what's soft, in the decision not to cover every rough edge but to balance it with something human. In this way, warmth becomes part of the story. It keeps the space honest but forgiving, raw but never harsh. It's this gentle push and pull, cold concrete carrying warmth like an ember, that turns an industrial kitchen into a refuge. It says, yes, this building was once built for machines. But now, it's built for you. And on rainy days, when the city outside feels damp and distant, that warmth is what makes you stay a little longer. Leaning against the solid island, feeling the floor warm under layered rugs, steam rising from a mug between your hands. Proof that concrete can be cold, but it doesn't have to feel that way. We've stood inside the bones of the past, the brickwork laid by workers whose names are lost to history, the steel beams that once carried the hum of industry through the city's veins. But what about tomorrow? When we ask, is this the future of urban loft kitchens, what does that really look like beyond the romance of old bricks and rainy afternoons? The future, as it turns out, is already being built, quietly, layer by layer, inside these rugged frames. It starts with materials. The same rawness that defined the first loft conversions now leans into sustainability. New owners and designers know that raw doesn't have to mean wasteful. Reclaimed wood finds new life as cabinet fronts, salvaged metal sheeting becomes a backsplash, old industrial carts are reborn as rolling islands. Every scuff, every nick, every weathered edge keeps a piece of something once discarded alive, a tiny rebellion against the culture of the throwaway. Concrete, too, gets smarter. Today, some countertops are made with low-carbon concrete mixes, or even recycled aggregates that reduce their footprint. Sealants are more natural, less toxic, designed to protect surfaces without sealing off the story they hold. Paints for exposed brick are low VOC, keeping the air clean in spaces that already breathe through old window frames and wide vents. But future-proofing isn't just about the materials you can touch, it's about the invisible systems that keep life humming behind the scenes. Many modern loft kitchens quietly hide cutting-edge tech inside all that visible rawness. Smart appliances, induction cooktops that conserve energy, ovens that preheat themselves while you finish work in the next room, fridges that remind you you're low on greens when the rain makes you too lazy to go out. Fixtures matter too. Faucets that reduce water waste, under-counter filtration systems that make city tap water cleaner than any bottle, even smart meters that help you track how much energy your urban kitchen really pulls in a week of daily life. Then there's flexibility, maybe the most crucial piece of any future-ready kitchen. A true industrial loft kitchen is never static. It's built to evolve with you, the same way the city does. A movable island on lockable casters. Open shelving you can reconfigure as your life changes, more cookbooks, fewer bottles, or the other way around. Magnetic walls that hold knives today but could hold art tomorrow. It's also about recognizing that the lines between life's functions are blurring. That island might be your breakfast spot at dawn, your laptop station by noon, your wine bar by dusk. The open plan means your kitchen doesn't just feed you, it hosts your work calls, your creative projects, your late-night conversations when the rain outside makes you want to linger over one more cup of tea. And at the heart of all this quiet innovation is an idea both simple and radical, that the future of the urban loft kitchen isn't a complete break from its past. It's a careful layering of then and now, the visible grit of the factory floor balanced by hidden tech that makes life smoother, cleaner, smarter. A patchwork of materials and systems that honor the imperfections of what came before, while quietly stitching in the resilience that tomorrow demands. When you stand inside a loft kitchen built for the future, you can feel it humming under the surface. The pipes overhead might look antique, but the lights that run along them shift color temperature as the daylight fades. The concrete island might look like it's been here forever, but it hides outlets, wireless chargers, maybe a compost drawer built to make waste almost invisible. In this way, the future of the loft kitchen asks us to keep the best of what we have, the rawness, the history, the honesty of exposed structure, and weave it into how we live now, sustainably, flexibly, responsibly. A kitchen that is as tough as the city outside, yet soft enough to shelter us when the rain taps gently on the old window panes. The best way to see the future is to step inside the present, to look at the spaces people are building right now, behind those steel-framed windows and heavy old doors that don't give away their secrets from the street. Picture a converted warehouse in Brooklyn. Outside, the bricks are dark with decades of soot and rain, but step inside and you'll find a kitchen that feels like a warm pulse in the heart of all that history. Here, an old factory floor has been divided only by the careful placement of furniture, no fake walls, no drywall to choke off the openness. The kitchen sits at the center, a huge concrete island with waterfall edges, lit from above by a row of matte black pendants that once hung in a train depot. Reclaimed oak shelves line the back wall, stacked with mismatched ceramics from local makers. On the floor, layered rugs break up the chill of the original poured slab. A patchwork of faded reds and deep indigos that catch crumbs and stories in equal measure. In Berlin, a couple turned an abandoned printing factory into their home. Their kitchen runs the full length of one wall, a long counter of poured concrete softened by birch cabinets below and a line of plants above that catch the city's fleeting sun. A vintage workbench doubles as a prep station and an informal dining table, surrounded by old metal stools found at a flea market. At night, soft track lighting bounces off the pale brick, giving the entire room a hush that feels almost sacred when rain hits the glass. Or imagine a loft kitchen in Melbourne, tucked inside what was once a textile mill. Here, the owners leaned into the building's bones, exposed ductwork snakes through the high ceiling, the brick walls still bear traces of faded signage from another era. But the kitchen itself feels fresh, deliberate. Glossy concrete counters meet raw-edged timber shelves, and a custom steel rack hangs above the island to hold dried herbs, copper pots, and a stray trailing vine or two. It's a space that works just as hard as it rests, where breakfast for one can turn into a supper for 12 without moving a single wall. What ties these kitchens together isn't just their industrial shell, it's their spirit of improvisation and honesty. Each owner has made peace with the imperfections, the floor that slopes a little near the back wall, the pipes that hum faintly when someone upstairs turns on the shower, the windows that rattle when the wind hits just right. Instead of fighting these quirks, they frame them, lighting them softly, polishing them where needed, leaving them alone where they're better left rough. Designers who work on these kitchens today take cues from the first artists who claimed these spaces decades ago. They mix old and new fearlessly, hand-thrown mugs next to high-tech appliances, salvaged fixtures wired with smart bulbs. They balance showpiece elements, a dramatic island, a statement range hood, with everyday practicality, deep drawers that close softly, pantry shelves that hold weeks of groceries in plain sight. And always, they leave room for life to unfold. For a late-night snack eaten standing barefoot on cold concrete. For a neighbor who drops by for coffee and stays for dinner. For rain to tap at the windows while you lean on the island, waiting for soup to simmer, watching the city lights blur through fog. These real kitchens remind us that the industrial loft kitchen is not a trend, it's a testament to the city's resilience. To the idea that beauty doesn't always have to be polished smooth. To the belief that a good kitchen isn't just a place to cook, but a place to belong, to gather, to linger, to adapt to whatever tomorrow asks. And when you stand inside one of these spaces, run your hand over the grain of an old workbench turned dining table, catch your reflection in the faint sheen of a concrete countertop, watch steam curl toward a ceiling crossed with old iron beams, you understand that this isn't just nostalgia dressed up in subway tile and pendant lights. It's the future, built on the sturdy bones of what came before. standing at the end of a quiet hour spent wandering through raw brick walls and polished concrete counters, through rain-touched windows and stories of cities that keep reinventing themselves, one old building, one honest kitchen at a time. When we ask, is this the future of urban loft kitchens? Maybe the better question is, what do these kitchens teach us about how we want to live now? Because in a world that moves faster every year, that trades old for new without blinking, there's something radical about a space that holds onto its rough edges. About a kitchen that doesn't hide its pipes or perfect its brickwork or sand away every sign of a life once lived inside these walls. These kitchens remind us that beauty can be found in what's left behind. That warmth isn't built only with plush fabrics and soft colors, but with raw surfaces that tell the truth about what they were, and what they are now. That a countertop can crack and still be strong. That steel beams can creak but still hold the weight of daily life. They remind us that the future doesn't always have to be sleek and new. Sometimes it's better when it's patched together, old wood, new tech, a row of plants soaking up winter sun on a rain-streaked ledge. A pot of soup simmering while the city outside rushes by. And maybe that's the quiet promise of the industrial loft kitchen. That in a city that never stops moving, you can carve out a corner that feels anchored. That you can build a life on foundations that have carried other lives before yours, workers and artists, dreamers and doers, people who stood in the same footprint where you stand now, stirring your tea, tapping your spoon on concrete that holds the memory of their footsteps. So tonight, or tomorrow, or whenever the rain falls again and you find yourself inside your own kitchen, look around. Ask yourself what makes it yours. Ask yourself what you'd keep exposed, what you'd patch up, what you'd pass down to the next hands that will stand where you stand. Because maybe the future of the urban loft kitchen isn't a question of design at all. Maybe it's just a question of honesty. Of holding rawness and comfort in the same breath. Of trusting that what's strong enough to hold the city's past can carry you forward, too. for spending this hour with us, inside the fog and foundation, the warmth and rain, the old bones and new ideas that make these kitchens more than just rooms for cooking. They're proof that even in the hardest concrete, something soft can grow. Even in the busiest city, you can build a place to linger. This is Charette Theory. Until next time, keep building, keep dreaming, keep looking for beauty in the raw edges.